series, sports, etc. So, yeah, no, at the end of the day, you know, consumer have not really saved through the streaming transition, and actually now with the multiplication of new services, you know, Disney Plus, HBO Max, etc., you know, they probably will end up paying more if the trends continue than what they were paying on traditional cable for more or less the same amount of content. So I'm going to move to the next slide. So actually, it's a great transition. So now looking at the streaming, you know, services, how has the COVID crisis, you know, affected consumption of different streaming services? So what we've seen in the last 6 months as a major trend is that basically the streaming has shifted from AVOD, which is free content, to subscription services. It could be, again, a little unexpected because you'd think that people, you know, being at home wants to watch more content, and they would they would go for the free services. But the big winners, again, of the pandemic are already, you know, companies that were doing very well. You know, for example, usage of Netflix has increased by 15% during the pandemic. Amazon Prime has gained 24%, Hulu 17%. So overall, all these companies have gained a lot of attention and viewership. Disney Plus, you know, which of course just launched, you know, about 6 months ago, you know, is still growing. But again, today about already 30%, a third of people who stream in the US are consuming content on Disney Plus. Of course, apps like ESPN Plus, you know, have lost significantly, you know, live sports being on pause for many months. There's not much to watch. And on the right side of the graph, you can see the where, you know, the free content sources, and they've seen quite a decrease in content consumption. So even YouTube, for example, lost about 21% of viewers. But services that you may be familiar with, like Pluto TV and Tubi TV, have also lost significant amounts of viewers, which, you know, for them it's a problem because they make money with, you know, eyeballs. So you know, less viewer means less advertising revenue. So again, these are the trends that we're seeing now in the streaming world, or at least that, you know, we've seen in the last 6 months. And again, the big winners are, again, the big company SVOD services, which have seen dramatic increase in content consumption. So one can wonder, you know, why people during the pandemic have gone for the subscription services, and you know, I think, you know, one possible explanation is that, you know, people being at home wanted to maybe catch up with the, you know, the content they haven't watched before, like the top series, the best programming, as I've been binging a lot, as we said. So that has, of course, benefited these companies, which fortunately had, you know, quite a good amount of content that was produced prior to the pandemic, so they could still release new content on a regular basis and market it, which, you know, contributed to an increased number of viewers. But again, for the industry, the big challenge during the last 6 months has been production and getting new content, because production has been on pause pretty much everywhere in the world. It has not fully resumed to what, you know, in the US yet. So right now there's a big question, you know, depending on how long we're going to be in this crisis, you know, these companies, they live on new stuff, new stuff, new content, and content is expensive. Netflix pays about $3 million an episode for originals. Stars pay about $1 million. So there's a lot at stake, but at some point they're going to need to go out and produce these new shows. Otherwise, there's going to be some problems down the line for the platforms. So anyway, so these are the trends that we're seeing now in the streaming world, and I'm going to move on to the next slide. So yeah, so going back to your point, what is exactly the size of the market in terms of revenue if you compare traditional pay TV to streaming revenue? So the US pay TV today, even though it's going down, it's still the largest pay TV market in the world. The US pay TV market, again, we're talking about video subscriptions. So we're not including, let's say if you sign up for Comcast or Spectrum, we're not including what you're paying for broadband. This is purely video subscription on pay TV. So pay TV still generate $80 billion in revenue in the US today. If you take all the streaming revenue, Netflix, Amazon Prime, all of them, we're at about 24 billion. So you can see that, the pay TV market is definitely not dead, and it's still a very, very strong market.
So my questions here is, most of the streaming platforms do not have an advertising model. They only have a subscription model by which they make money. Netflix doesn't take ads. Amazon doesn't take ads. Even if there are other streaming engines that take ads, it's negligible. The spend on that ad is, the amount of money they pay an advertiser has to pay is negligible. You could just literally go and submit your ad and you don't have to pay anything to run it. So what I'm trying to say is, even though the streaming audience is increasing, there's no monetization on streaming. How does that get fixed? And till that doesn't get fixed, this chart just doesn't make sense.
Absolutely. So that's a great question. Basically, let's go back to streaming. So there's two models. There's advertising based and subscription based. Advertising based, to your point, is it's very hard to make money. If you want to be a competitive player in the streaming world, you're talking about anywhere from 5 to 15 billion a year invested in original content. Because if you don't have great content, you're not going to get any subscriber or viewer. So this is huge, and the only way to make money is through the subscription model. Advertising, Hulu, started as an advertising only platform. And, over the last 3-4 years, they've transitioned to a hybrid model. And now, you pretty much have nothing to watch in the free option, and you have to pay $10 a month because Hulu, wanted to be competitive with the other guys and had to step up original production, and that's very expensive. So the AVOD model now, as that we're seeing, is, again, what you're seeing on AVOD platform like Pluto and Tubi. So Tubi was acquired by Fox about a year ago. It's mostly library content, which is less expensive to acquire, but that's pretty much all that these advertising-based platform can afford today. So so to your point, while the number of subscribers is well past the number of subscribers on traditional pay TV, when you look at the revenue, it's still significantly less than what traditional pay TV generates. The reason, is that, subscription is less. I mean, you pay $10 for Netflix, you probably pay, $50 to $60 for a basic subscription on cable. And then churn is also very high, much higher on stream in the streaming world than it is on traditional pay TV. So that directly impacts the revenue as well. But just to look at the market globally, again, today, US is definitely the #1 market in the world when it comes to traditional pay TV and also streaming. The next market is China, but you can see, you know, it's almost 10% of what the US generates in terms of revenue. So, the revenue goes down very quickly, you know, as you go down the charts. And one other comments, you know, I'd like to make is that, you know, because pay TV is still so big in the US, this is the reason why new streaming services like HBO Max, for example, HBO has maintained all its linear business in the US, because, you know, they're getting paid for 35 million subs, $10 a month by all the cable operators. So they didn't want their streaming service to compete with their pay TV business in the US. So while they've pulled out of all the content licensing deal in the rest of the world, they've maintained, you know, all their traditional pay TV business in the US, at least for the time being. But, you know, when you see the numbers, you understand. Same thing with Disney Plus and any streaming services that has any kind of traditional pay TV business. So this leads me to the next, you know, really the discussion is, you know, now the streaming war. So, you know, you've seen, I mean, multiplication of services over the last year. And again, the pandemic has not stopped any of these big companies to launch their own service. And again, these are huge companies. I mean, you know, maybe not Quibi, but every one of them, you know, you're talking about 200 billion market valuation, you know, so it's not, you know, they're not startups. They've been betting really big on the streaming business. And, you know, one can wonder why studios like Disney or, you know, HBO have decided to go and launch their own service. Well, this is mostly due to the success of Netflix. So originally, when Netflix launched, they licensed all their content from the studios. And, you know, of course, the studios, you know, were very happy with the deal, because it was a new way from them to monetize their library content. But over the years, as Netflix has grown and become this, you know, world giant streaming platform, the studios say, well, wait a minute, you know, we own the content, we own the assets, so we can go and monetize this ourselves. You know, we can build a platform and we can make the revenue. So that's what you've seen in the last 5 years in preparation of the launch of this new streaming giants. The studios, whether Disney or Fox or Warner Brothers, have pulled out of their Netflix deal, and they, you know, decided to keep all the content and monetize and go ahead and monetize the content themselves. So this is also why, you know, if you're a Netflix subscriber or viewer, you know, you've seen that Netflix has ramped up the amount of original content on the platform, because, you know, they didn't have these deals anymore, so they had no choice than producing their own content, which, you know, eventually they've been very successful with. But that's kind of, you know, the background behind. Now the question is, you know, will they all be successful? You know, I think the next 2 years will be very, very interesting. You know, they've bet really big on this. Some companies like Disney, you know, they've put everything into the streaming service. So if it's not, you know, of course, you know, they have a lot of cash and they can afford not break even for a while. But again, today, just in the US, you have 6 major streaming services. If you include, Netflix, Amazon Prime, Hulu, Disney Plus, HBO Max, Apple TV Plus, and Peacock. And what the research is showing is that on average, an American consumer would probably sign up for up to 3 services, but that's already a lot. So that means, at the end of the day, not all services, even giant company, will be successful because again, no one makes money if a subscriber, sign up for a month to a service, then cancel and go to another service. So again, next 2 years will be very, very interesting to see, what's happening in the landscape. There was a question. Okay. Anyway, so if we look at the new services that you probably heard of, or maybe even watching today, that have launched in the next year, again, right in the middle of a major global pandemic, these companies went ahead and launched a major streaming platform. So first one was Apple TV Plus, launched in November of last year. So Apple TV, as big as they are, has been wanting to have a television strategy, outside of the Apple TV box for a long time. Last year, they finally came out with Apple TV Plus, which is again a streaming service, $5 a month. So you get original series, documentaries, and even news programs like a morning show produced by Apple. So their programming budget is about $6 billion a year for production. Again, this is a big number, but it's still it's not that big when you consider that Netflix will spend $17 billion in 2020 in content production. The second service that launched was Disney Plus. So you probably heard a lot about Disney Plus because they came out with very strong advertising campaign. And again, all these services have a global objective. So it's even, if they may launch US only in the beginning or with limited international, eventually they all want to be global because that's really the only way for them to scale and make money. So the second service that was launched was Disney Plus. Just as a reminder, Disney Plus is not just, the Disney content that you're familiar with, family and kids, because a couple of years ago, Disney acquired Fox. So they acquired Fox, which, include the entire 20th Century Fox content library and some very, very strong brands, like the Pixar movies, the Marvel, the Star Wars, and all the 20th Century Fox movies. So again, very strong content. There's definitely a lot of fans of the content out there. And so they went ahead and launched Disney Plus last year in November, which had about 30 million subscribers after a month. So great success for Disney Plus. The next service that was launched was Hbo Max, launched in May of this year, $15 a month. So again, Hbo Max is not just HBO content. Just a little bit of background, HBO so is part of Time Warner, which was acquired by AT&T, so the phone company. But also AT&T owns DirecTV in the US and other distribution platform. So, and of course, part of the acquisition was including the Warner Brother film library, which is actually the largest film library in Hollywood. So So all of this, of course, is included in the HBO Max offering. So very strong offering. Friends, I mentioned Friends because, up until a few years ago, Friends was actually the highest rated show on Netflix, believe it or not. I mean, until, Warner pulled out of the deal, Friends is still one of the highest rated show on Netflix. And the last service that launched during the summer was Peacock. So Peacock, which is the streaming service from NBC Universal, Comcast. So again, a very strong offering, which include all the Universal films and series, original series. Please remember that Universal also own some cable networks, some films, and they launched an hybrid model with AVOD. But again, their goal is really to get you to sign up for $9.99 a month. So very crowded space, and it's going to get even busier if you look at the last slide, which is an overall view of the media, entertainment, and technology landscape in the US today. So you can see, let me try to give you some clarity. So in yellow and red, you have companies that are either studio or content editor. In green, you have telecom players. In darker orange, you have the cable companies. And of course, in the corners, you have the tech companies, and basically the size of the circle represent the market cap of each company. So, we were talking about giants before, and we're really talking about giants. Most of these companies have a $200 billion plus valuation, and of course, if you look at Amazon, Apple, it's more than that. So I think from this, what we learn is that video content, it's really the next. Everyone is trying to play a big role in the space. But the question is, again, how much content at the end of the day can consumer watch and pay for? There's again a limited amount of services that consumer are willing to sign up for. But just to give you take a few examples, in this landscape, if you look at, for example, MGM, seems very small, which still is a big brand, if you compare it to the other companies that are part of the landscape, or even Lionsgate and Stars, which is, it's an independent studio. They have very good shows. Stars, of course, is one of the top premium pay TV service in the US and the world. Now they look very small, if you compare to the other players in the landscape. So I know this maybe raise more questions that maybe it answers, but this is the reality today of the media and entertainment landscape in the United States. And it will be very interesting, to see where we are in a couple of years from now. Again, it's really about go big or go home, because you need the leverage, you need the size to produce the content, to market it, but not all of these companies will be successful. I mean, if you take the example of Quibi, which launched a couple of years ago with big plans, with very good investments, to be a major player in the streaming subscription model. Now they had a very limited number of subscribers. Now they're talking about selling the company, and you have great people, some that we are familiar with, that are managing Quibi. So again, everyone wants to have a play in the video game. You have giant companies with a lot of resources, but not all of them can be successful because, again, at the end of the day, there's just so much content people can watch and pay for.
I believe Quibi is up for sale, by the way. I sent you a message about that yesterday.
Okay. Should we buy it?
I think they're looking at what's their revenue. I had all the details actually. They've been around 6 months only, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they're actually pitching in the Bay Area right now to get bought.
Yeah.
Yeah, they pitched to Apple. They've already pitched to they were at Apple last week, by the way, pitching.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, it's hard because, again, and, when we looked at, going back to a previous slide, they don't even make it up to the, top 10 streaming app, So again, when people watch content, they go to Netflix, they go to Amazon Prime, they go to Hulu, but it's very hard for a new player to
yeah, they've got around 400,000 paying subscribers, by the way.
Yeah, which I mean, for what they invested, it's nothing really,
Yeah, and they're not. I mean, their initial projection was that they're going to reach 74 million subscribers, and they're at
400 paying, it's 400,000 paying today, but I mean, what is the churn? Are they gonna?
Yeah, how many are downloading the app and then deleting it and coming back? Yeah.
So
isn't the reality that their competition is TikTok and not these media companies?
Exactly.
Yeah.
TikTok and YouTube.
Yeah, and when you look at this graph, I mean, obviously you could, there's a lot of possibilities for acquisitions out there, and you could think that some of these big tech giants, whether Alphabet or Apple could acquire, easily. Sony was up for sale for a while, and it's Sony has huge amount of content, really good content. So but YouTube has not been so far. YouTube TV is growing, but has not been a major player in the pay TV or space so far. And they've tried YouTube TV also. It's interesting that YouTube even license traditional networks to be part of YouTube TV because they still believe that traditional networks drive a significant amount of the audience. In terms of besides Amazon, which Amazon Prime is doing very well, YouTube of course in the free content video space, but in terms of services that really make money, Apple TV Plus has not released any numbers, but again they don't really make it to the top services, when you conduct some research. So as big as they are, they still have some, again, leaving aside Amazon, they still have some challenges to penetrate this market. So anyway, it's I think we're again living in a very very interesting time. Again, the next couple of years will be very interesting, and whether you work in the media sector or even as a consumer, it will be very interesting to see what happens.
Patrice, you spoke about two business models. One was the ad revenue, and the other one was the subscription. Do you see the emergence of a third one, which would be us? I mean, our data, our preferences.
Yeah, so that's a very good question. Basically, the AVOD platform, I mean, they monetize the data already. That's really what they're trying to sell to advertisers is, what do you, who you are, what do you watch, what kind of series you watch. So they already, you know, when you talk about advertising on AVOD platform, it's not like, you know, the traditional 30-second spot that you buy on linear TV, which you don't really know until, you know, the next day what, you know, what the rating has been and that kind of thing. They're selling the data, you know, the AVOD platform are already selling the data.
Okay.
So, and then, you know, SVOD platforms are also using, you know, big data but that's, you know, for the purpose of improving the service. It's not to sell your data. They want you they want to improve your experience. They want to improve the quality of the content. Again, Netflix is using big data and artificial intelligence to produce new content. So just to give you an example, the success rate of a new show on traditional TV is between 30 and 40%. The success rate of a new show on Netflix is 80%. So it starts with the script. You know, they actually have the ability to submit a script algorithm and see, you know, what may be the flaws, what needs to be improved. And it also raises question, you know, between something that, you know, historically has been a creative process, but now the process is driven by technology and data. So you need to find a, you know, a balance, I guess, between, you know, what the data tells you, but still, you know, leave enough room to have some level of creativity and find. Otherwise, everything may look similar at the end, you know. But they know exactly with all the data they're collecting, you know, they know that, you know, if at 6.5 minutes when you start the show, nothing, you know, major happen, you know, you may go somewhere else. So they know exactly what, you know, how to produce, and that's unprecedented.
So I have a question.
Do you see cross-selling happening, like a Netflix selling to Whole Foods, so that Amazon knows exactly what you would consume? Cross-selling across platforms. Do you see that happening as a potential?
You know, I think right now, so in this case, it would be Amazon Prime, because Netflix wouldn't, I think they would cooperate with Amazon. But, you know, right now, I think, again, subscribers are so valuable to this platform. I don't think they want to start, you know, selling their data, because, you know, people may go away if they learn that, you know. So it's more valuable as of today for them to use the data, the big data, to improve the service and keep you as a subscriber than trying to, you know, go out and sell the data. Again, a few years ago, Netflix started to talk about hybrid model and maybe starting an advertising tier, and I think that they moved away from this because they probably think that, you know, the negative would be higher than the positive, and it's better for them to keep you as a subscriber, not, you know, fire any ads, and give you the best content.
So I have a question about the definition of success on these streaming platforms, because they don't release the information about viewership that transparently, right?
Yeah.
And I believe that if you watch a show on Netflix and a subscriber watches it for 2 minutes, Netflix considers that as a successful watch. Mm-hmm. That's when you get counted as a subscriber, you get counted as having watched, and then it gets into the recommendation engine, and then they start giving you content around more content around the same genre or mm-hmm. similar content. But Amazon Prime has yet another method of figuring out or basically streamlining what a successful subscriber to a certain show is. So how do you get all of this together on one definition of a successful show? Because for all I know, for 2 minutes, I don't even realize what language the show is in. And after 2 minutes, I'm like, hey, I really can't destroy my viewership experience by listening to a language that I'm not comfortable with. and I leave the show and I haven't really watched it, but I'm still a successful, I'm still a success as per Netflix. And the next shows that it's really recommending for me from its recommendation engine are literally shows in that language. And it's happened so many times. And then I realized that they just have to have you watch a certain title for 2 minutes. That's it.
That's a great question. Absolutely. So basically, that's right. You know, most of the SVOD platforms don't share any of the viewership data, and again, they don't have to, because they don't rely on advertising. So that's the great thing about this, is that they can be as opaque as they want. You're never going to know exactly what's the rating of a specific show on Netflix. That being said, there are now a number of independent third-party research that go ahead and conduct different kind of surveys where they ask people what they've watched, and the success rate is not just the viewership. It's also about engagement. Like as you said, if you start watching a show but only watch 2 minutes of it, is it really a success? So the longer, the higher the percentage of the time consumed, the better. Also, how quickly do you watch the series? If you start watching and then the same evening you binge all the 12 episodes, that's also a great factor of success. So it's like the combination of all these factors that create the success rates, and again, these companies have been and again, it's it's also a way to measure their return on investment, because again, companies like Netflix that spend on average $3 million an episode, they want to be sure that every piece of content that they produce, there's some kind of return for it. So that's what I was saying. There's a third area where Netflix and streaming companies are using artificial intelligence and big data, and it's actually to manage the networks on the back end, because as the video consume a lot of bandwidth, and Netflix in some territories is probably the utilizes most of the bandwidth. So they with all the data they have, they can anticipate bandwidth usage and infrastructure in specific territories. So they know that, for example, on a given day they're gonna have higher consumption of certain programs, certain shows, and they can maximize their network, which is a big deal, because when I think we talked about it yesterday, but you don't want you want streaming quality is part of the success as well. I mean, these days you don't see any kind of buffering problem anymore, but there's a lot of technology in the background to
optimize that.
Yeah.
Yeah, but the other thing that I wanted to really point out was that the future for Alphabet, the future of YouTube is gonna be commerce. That's the direction they're going in. They're literally integrating e-commerce into a lot of the content that they're hosting right now. Yeah,
no, they're definitely trying to create more revenue, but it's crazy to see that YouTube, which has hundreds of millions of users, has very had difficulties to launch their own pay series. They've had challenges over the year, and YouTube TV now is starting to I think there are 1.5 million subscribers in the US, which is not bad, but again, for YouTube scale, it's not a lot of subscribers.
Yeah, but I think the most logical would have been for them to use the data that Google is already collecting, which they will now, especially when they're literally asking creators to start tagging shop. They're becoming a shopping destination. That's the future of YouTube, by the way.
Yeah, that's for sure. So that's where we are today. And of course, what's interesting is that, again, the US really lead the trends. I mean, all these companies, all these new services have a global vision, and for many years now, the US has been really leading, the way, the trends of what's happening in the rest of the world. So again, we're living in an interesting time for sure when it comes to media and entertainment. So I hope I brought some clarity, even though it's a complex landscape. But if you have any other thoughts or questions, just email me and we can discuss. And always happy to connect with you guys.
Thank you so much, Patrice. This was a really amazing presentation. I think it gives us not only pre and post COVID statuses with what's going on with broadcasters and the entire MET universe, which is media, entertainment, telco, or technology universe, but where we will be in the future is another question, because now that COVID has hit so many production houses in a very drastic way, are we going to get the same amount of content? Will there be a scarcity of content? What kind of content will we be seeing? Will we be seeing people even touching each other ever again? So these are questions up for grabs. I bet we don't know how it's going to play out right now.
It's actually interesting. What we're starting to see is that not being able to film in the US, some companies have started to go to other countries where filming restrictions are not as strong as they are in the US. So, for example, Canada or some places in Europe. So they've shifted their production schedule, and they've basically going where it's possible, but sometimes working with local talents as well. So this is maybe the beginning of a trend as well. We'll see what happens. But they're doing everything they can, because content is really what make all this company work.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much, Patrice, for this. This was amazing. I'm going to stop recording so that I have a bookmark to this session, and I'm going to restart recording for Benoit, who's up next, and I'll introduce him in that video.